before I start with the new project of the month, I just wanted to say that I do read all the comments that are posted on my channel, and I answer most of them, if not all of them. One of or several comments that I read lately do comment on the quality of the sound of my videos, and I'm aware that the sound could be better, and I will endeavor to, if I can, that is practically and financially, that I will try to improve the sound of my videos. Now, you must be aware, or you must know, that my channel for the moment is not a high rolling one, meaning that I don't have thousands of subscribers, certainly not millions of them, and all that I do on my channel is paid for out of my own pocket. So as long as my channel is rather small, I cannot invest a lot of money in much better recording equipment. That being said, I am going to look for a solution to improve the sound of my videos. The only thing I ask is that you give me a bit of leeway, to look around on the market for workable solutions which are financially, let's say, interesting for me. Okay, like I said, I'm working on a rather restricted budget, but I am aware that the sound could improve, and your comments are not wasted. So I will keep it in the back of my mind, and as soon as I find, let's say, a affordable and workable solution to improve the sound quality of my videos, I will apply them. Alright? So, okay, that's the let's say general announcement for the channel. So I want to introduce to you the next project on my channel. So the next project this month will be the refurbishing of a DJ mixing console, and to be more precise, a Pioneer DJM-400. Now, actually, I've got two of these to do. So I'm only showing you the oldest of the two. So I'm going to start with this one. And in fact, they are both, as far as I can tell, identical. There's one difference. The other one looks exactly like this one, but has, under the name of the console, it has just one word which says Special Edition. Now, strike me down if I know what the difference between both of them are, because they both have the same number of knobs, the same designation of knobs, the same display, everything, even up to the connectors on top, right? So everything is identical, except the other mixing console has the mention Special Edition. Okay, so I'm not an expert on mixing consoles. In fact, truth be told, this is really not my area of expertise. But But a friend of mine who is a DJ asked me if I could have a look at his mixing console, so this one and the other one too, of course, because he's complaining about the scratchiness of the fade in, fade out potentiometers, and as you can tell, the fade in, fade out potentiometers are sliders, alright, and it's scratchy, and at least that's what he tells me, the sound is scratchy, and in certain positions it's even dead, yeah, so which to me points to two possible causes. Either the potentiometers are dirty, or the potentiometers are worn out. Now, this particular console is from February 2009. Alright, so which would make it roughly 14 years old. So yeah, I can imagine the sliders, you know, there are 3 of them, that the sliders are worn out after 14 years of use. So there might even be a bit of corrosion at work here, because as you can tell, some of the screws holding down the panel, the front panel of the mixing console, are corroded. So yeah, there might be a combination of factors, so corrosion, dirt, yeah, wearing out of contacts, etc. Alright, I found the appropriate screws to remove. So not only do you have to remove the 4 corner screws, you also have to remove the 2 screws at either end of the mixing panel, so one in the middle here on the left and one in the middle on the right, but you also have to release 2 screws from the bottom of the mixing panel, so these 2 to be more precise. Alright, so these 2 here. Once you've released all those screws, you can just lift out and up the control panel. So let's do that, and let's have a closer look at what's inside. Alright, so let me give you a slightly better position to see what lifting up the panel will reveal. Let's be careful here. Alright, there are 2 flat ribbon connectors connecting the front panel with the rest of the device, and it's quite hefty, I have to say. The front panel is very, very heavy. Alright, so here we go. Wow. Wow, now this is quite a complex device. Don't know if you can see this, but yeah, it's really very, very complex. Alright, so what are we seeing here? Well, obviously, so this panel here is the front panel, but laid back up. Alright, and there are 2 very large ribbon connectors connecting the mixing panel with the main panel, or the main PCB inside the box. Right there. Alright, and well, one thing that I see immediately is the power supply, let's say the power supply section of the mixing panel, which is the AC power input right here, okay, with, I suspect, the main switch here, the main on-off switch here, a transformer right here, alright, and then probably the rectifier bridge and all that, located right here in this section here. Power regulator, filter capacitors, etc., etc. That is probably this section right here. And then you've got a very intricate little central PCB, which is this one here, which, as far as I read up on it, probably is what contains all the AD and DA converters this mixing panel uses. Don't be mistaken, this is actually a very sophisticated mixing panel. It's not analog at all, okay? Pioneer seems to have designed a mixing panel where all the sound is digitized in order to be able to use all sorts of effects on them, and then when it needs to pass on the digitized sound back to, let's say, an amplifier, then there is a DA converter which converts the digitized signal back to an analog one. So yeah, this is very sophisticated stuff, and as such, you know, I will stay well away from the processing board right there. You know, it's very complex electronics, and it's all SMD electronics, and I want to stay well away from it. So the next thing I'm going to try, at least, is to disconnect the front panel ribbon cables, so these two cables here, from the main board inside the mixing panel's cabinet, right? So I do believe that it's probably sufficient to pull them loose from the connectors down there on the board, right? I personally, I really don't like these connectors because they are extremely fragile, in my experience, but I think I am going to give it a very gentle tug to disconnect them. Let's see if we can. Yes, we can. There you go. That's one connector. And now the second one. And there you go. And this is the second one. Alright. So let's take away the box before we risk damaging anything. So, but I'm giving you a close-up look of the insides. Alright. So, yeah. It all looks rather clean and okay to me. So, more than likely, I'm not going to touch any of this unless after close inspection I would find something abnormal. But as it is, I don't think I'm going to touch much anything inside here. So let's concentrate rather on the front panel. Basically, to release the business end of the front panel, unscrewing 3 screws is sufficient. So this is the area of the control panel I'm going to concentrate on. So you have the 3 slider or the 3 fader potentiometers, one on either side, and then you have the cross-channel fade-over potentiometer here. Alright. I can see immediately some moisture damage on the crossover potentiometer, and generally speaking, I can't say it looks cruddy, but it certainly doesn't look very clean. So in general terms, this panel will need some cleaning. Now, I'm not going to work on it as it is, so it's still connected to the mixing panel itself, so the front of the mixing panel. But what I am going to do, what I am going to do is I'm going to release this little panel here from the rest of the mixing panel front end by pulling this little ribbon cable here. Alright, so now to be able to unsolder and replace the slider potentiometers from the PCB, I need to detach them from the metal panel, which in turn attaches it to the front panel of the mixing console, right? So there are 2 large Phillips screws holding in the crossover potentiometer, and there are much smaller Phillips screws holding in the fade-in, fade-out potentiometers. Alright, so yeah, well, let's see how easy it goes. Alright. It's not too difficult. Alright, so that's 2 screws for the large crossover potentiometer, and it's loose. Okay, so now let's see for the smaller one. I'm using a foam pad to cushion the PCB because I don't want to break the ribbon cable, right? I want to be gentle with the ribbon cable. So yeah, that's why I'm working from a foam pad right now. Okay, so now comes the moment of truth. So what I did notice was that what I should do now that I released all the screws is to slide this PCB forward or upwards by a couple of millimeters. and then it should lift off technically. So let's see if I'm right. Oh yeah, there you go. And here it is, the PCB with the slider potentiometers. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm matching up the potentiometers that I bought with the old ones that I'm going to replace. Okay, so this is the channel crossover potentiometer, and as you can see, they are identical. Alright, at least from the top, but when you look at it from the side, they're not identical in shape, but they are identical in size. Okay, and even the contacts seem to match up. So there are 4 contacts on one side, and then 2 contacts on the other. Alright, so yeah, the large one seems to match up, and then you have the small potentiometer, which is the fade in fade out potentiometer, and that one too seems to match up with the original, up to even the stem length. Alright, so even that seems to match up pretty much. Yeah, see, the height is identical. Well, maybe there's a 1 millimeter difference, maybe, but yeah, not even, maybe half a millimeter difference. But yeah, it matches up rather well. Also, you know, the contacts seem to match up. I don't know if you can see it, but you know, there you go. So the height, the length, everything seems to match up. Also, I did try out one of the screws, which is meant to attach, for example, the fader potentiometer to the metal panel, and the screw fits exactly. You know, it fits perfectly. Also, the holes for the screws on the small potentiometer match up exactly. So if I hold the new one next to the old one, you can tell that the distance between the screw holes is the same. Alright, for both potentiometers. Okay, so yeah, it all seems to match up in height, in size, in pinout, so it all matches up. Now the slider potentiometer, the small slider potentiometer is rated at 10 kilo ohms. Okay, so if I slide it from one end to the other, it goes from 0 to 10.01 kilo ohms. Okay, so alright, and it's smooth, it's really smooth. And if I try out the other contact, remember, each potentiometer has basically two channels, you could say, because they are stereo, right? So let's measure the other channel. The other channel measures slightly lower, so 9.79 kilo ohms. we go. Alright, so the other channel is slightly lower, lower by 210 ohms. I don't know if that's critical, but I'd say that it probably isn't. Generally, they leave a little bit of leeway, you know, a few percent of leeway in a potentiometer, or in any part for that matter. So yeah, I don't think that should pose a problem. The pins of the crossover slider are numbered. I don't know if you can see this, but so the pins have a number. Alright. Alright, so the crossover slider, crossover slider seems to work on both channels, I would guess. Let's see. Oh. Yes, they cross over. Okay, so each channel has a slightly different value on a potentiometer, but they should be in the ballpark of, let's say, 10 kilo ohms. Alright, so these are the basic measurements of the parts you need to buy if you're going to replace the potentiometers. Alright, the important thing to remember is that the codes for the potentiometers is DCV 1006 for the one and DCV 1010 for the other. If you order them with these codes, and of course if you have a look at the specs of the potentiometers, then you should be fine. Alright. Obviously you can buy them per piece, yeah, but since I'm going to do the work to unmount everything from the mixing consoles, I'm not going to replace just one of them. I'm going to replace all of them in one go. Okay, and I bought I think the large ones as a couple, and I bought the small ones, I think it was 5 in one pack. Alright, the potentiometers are relatively pricey. Okay, so I mean relatively speaking, right? So I think all in all for both, I think I paid something like close to 40 bucks. Not cheap, but I mean the mixing console is worth a lot more than the potentiometers. here's a little tip. Slider potentiometers like these have one big weakness, which is that they are particularly vulnerable for dirt and dust and moisture getting inside of them through the slit through which the slider moves. Alright? So to avoid that, you can use a strip of Kapton tape like this. Alright? This is heat resistant tape. Okay? And by slitting it up in the middle and then sticking it over the slider's path, like you see it here, okay, you can in fact reduce the amount of dirt which gets into the potentiometer, which obviously is detrimental to its good functioning. Okay, so all it takes is just one short strip of Kapton tape which you slit down the middle, and just the length of the path of the slider. Okay, not larger, just this. Let me see, this is about 6 centimeters, I'm guessing. Let's see. 5.3 millimeter. Okay, so I mean 53 millimeters, so 5 centimeters and 3 millimeters. That's all it takes, and that way you can avoid a lot of dirt and dust and even moisture to get into the slider potentiometer. Alright, I'm getting ready to mount back the front panel onto the mixing console's body. Alright, now to do that I need to reconnect first these two flat ribbon cables, and Pioneer engineers were kind enough to mark for us where the contact side of the flat ribbons is located. So come on, focus. So there you see, right down there, contact side with an arrow pointing that way, which means that these little metallic contacts need to slide in that way, so towards my thumb. Alright, and I think I said it before, these contacts are really rather fragile, so you need to push down on the cable with not too much force, but applying force on all sides which are equal. Okay, so try to apply force which is spread equally over all sides of the cable. Alright, so otherwise you risk quite literally tearing it apart or breaking it. There you go. Cables are back in their slots, so now all I have to do is close up the case and mount back the buttons. The Panasonic DJM-400 mixing console is cleaned, refurbished. I mean, I put in some new potentiometers, you know, for the channel faders and the crossover fader. I also cleaned all the buttons and the case itself. I gave it a preventive cleaning with deoxit as well. And the more I look at it, the more I'm beginning to like this mixing console. I'm sure you could find an even more complete mixing console than this one, with far more effects and what have you. But I mean, at least to me, as a non-DJ, this looks a really beautiful mixing console. So yeah, it's ready. I also gave the contacts up here a little bit of a cleaning, you know, and yeah, I'm pleased with the result. It looks great. Alright, unfortunately I can't make you listen to the output of the mixing console, and for a couple of very silly reasons. The first one is, of course, I don't want to get a copy strike from YouTube. The second one is much more prosaic. I simply don't have the right cables to connect the mixing console up to my amplifier. It's just not, I don't have that kind of equipment in the house, right? So this is professional sound equipment, yeah, and that is not what is my prime occupation, right? I am more concerned with consumer electronics and not so much, let's say, professional sound equipment. But I wanted to give you a view of the DJM-400 mixing console when it's on. It looks really cool. I wish I knew how to get all of the possibilities out of it, because I'm quite certain it must sound really cool once it's hooked up to a proper amplifier and a proper sound source, right? But since I'm not a DJ, I am afraid that I won't be able to, well, to give you some music, you know, mixed music. So yeah, I'll see you soon on my channel for another video. Thanks for watching. Oh, and if you're curious to know what the difference is between the DJM-400 and the DJM-400 Limited, the limited version, so this version you see here, is has different colors for the buttons and the VU meter. In fact, it's the French flag colors, right? So bleu, blanc, rouge, right? So yeah, the limited edition, I think the only difference with the normal DJM-400 is that it simply has different LED color patterns.